Here we go. Okay, awesome. My name's Kristen. I'm the founder and CEO of Strut, and we are going to dive headfirst into strategic annual planning for 2024, specialized for venture capital firms. We are going to go through all the sections that we're planning to highlight today. If you have questions, feel free to toss them into the chat. I will be monitoring that, and I can feed them either appropriately or we can save them till the end. Otherwise, feel free to also, you can follow up with us afterwards if we didn't touch on anything that was of interest to you, or if you wanted to go deeper on something, we'll recap that at the end as well. But wanted to welcome everyone. This is Strut, and this is our team. We are a current mix. Not everyone here is featured, but all of the majority of us are here. We are a team of 17 and counting VC ops experts. Everyone here is a Swiss Army knife when it comes to venture capital, back of house, but everyone here also has a strong suit in a certain facet of the work. And we're going to dive into those, and you'll get to meet all of them as we kind of follow along here in the presentation. But this is who we are. We are a VC operations consulting firm. We specialize in all things middle office, back of office. We do fund operations, investor relations, fractional finance or outsourced CFO work. We also do Marcoms, marketing for VC funds, events, and then people ops HR. Am I forgetting anything? I think that's it. We do a lot. I always say it's not because we're crazy, but because we've been through many cycles with different fund managers. We start with many in the beginning, and as they mature into funds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they need different things in different moments, and we aim to be a support for them, holding all that institutional knowledge and helping them evolve and grow as they mature through their various life cycles and phases of evolution as a fund. So we'll hit the ground running here. Today's speakers, myself, I'm founder and CEO. I started Strut in 2016. Kayla is going to dive into marketing as our marketing expert here. Vienna is our investor relations expert, and she's going to dive into that piece. Nicole, our COO, is going to close us out at the end with some people ops HR support. Zosha is our ops expertise maven, who is going to dive into ops right out the gate. And then Beverly is our finance wonder, and she's going to tackle that piece of the presentation today. So we'll start, as I mentioned, with all these core areas. Again, feel free to drop questions in chat. I'm going to go on mute while Zosha takes the reins, and I'll be feeding her questions as we go if needed, or I'll save them to the end.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zosha Ulatowski, and I'm on year 2 with Strut. So fund operations is a broad bucket, right? That is going to touch on a lot of the various business functions across your firm. So it's going to touch on, marketing and IR and finance and all the things that my colleagues are going to speak into more deeply. Nicole, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So when we think about operations, I would encourage you, when you're reflecting and thinking about this past year and what you want to accomplish next year from an operations perspective, I would encourage you to kind of separate out kind of what is critical and required. These tend to be like the more administrative tasks, the compliance related tasks, that silly form that you always forget to fill out on some city's website saying that you do business in that city. All of those things can lead to big problems if they're not proactively done or done on time. So separating those out from like your business functions, that would be like your investment ops, your portfolio management, your investor relations, and then some of your growth drivers like marketing and thought leadership. Separate out the operations and processes for those. And I encourage you to kind of focus on these critical elements so that when you're investing and when you're doing all these fun events and wonderful community building, those underlying pieces that are so essential to running your business are going to go smoothly, and you won't have to worry about them when you're trying to plan your annual meeting in September. So think about what fell through the cracks. Where were the gaps? Was there a stack of tax notices on your desk that you just kind of ignored and hoped wouldn't come back to haunt you on your desk? Where were the issues? What was avoidable? What was unavoidable? But most importantly, I know we have a wide variety of people on this call, from GPs to operations managers and team leads. So depending on how your fund is structured and the team resources that you have in-house, like, this conversation may look different. So if you're a solo GP, a lot of this kind of operational administrative stuff is falling onto your plate. And if you do have an operations team, but the GP is still, there's still these problems arising, it's maybe worth looking at, do we have the right people handling these projects, or do we need to outsource or implement a tool? So these are all the things that I want you to think about when you're going through your previous year and thinking about next year. One of the biggest things for GPs is time. And one thing that Strut likes to do is free up time for GPs and the people running the funds so that they can focus on the core business efforts, like investing and investor relations, rather than on being on hold with the IRS or figuring out like how to pay some fine that you have no idea why you received from the state of New York. So that's where Strut comes in. And Nicole, if you could go to the next slide. So thinking about your time and how you can be more efficient with that time and spending your time less on the administrative stuff and more on investing and growing your funds, making returns to your LPs. So the first step I would say is to get tactical, to be strategic. So make a calendar of all those important deadlines, include things like insurance renewals, any sort of FINRA requirements, state filings, city filings, your annual meeting, events that you want to attend. Put all of that in one place so that you have transparency when you're looking across the team and all your different initiatives on like what's going on when for the firm. I would also encourage you to put in kind of monthly or quarterly themes so that you can help the team prioritize. A lot of these administrative tasks, like audit, tax, they require the entire team to be involved in some component of that. So understanding like, what is the priority for January? Like, what are some of these things? Like, what do we need to be focusing on? What do we have to finish? Is helpful in prioritizing across the team. Defining who is responsible for what and what your service providers are doing for you and where do you need to step in is really important so that these projects can be done successfully and on time. And then also, there's going to be a lot of inter-team communication. So who's ultimately responsible to making sure that everyone has what they need. And then ultimately too, like defining what success looks like and is it realistic from a process perspective, from a resource perspective, and really prioritizing the need to have versus the nice to have or the bonus pieces of running your business. Okay, I can pass it off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beverly Tang. I'm the fractional CFO for Strut. Nice to meet everyone. So here, as part of the fractional CFO or financing piece of your firm, I want to there's going to be a lot of overlap with what Zosha went over as far as how you handle ops and finance together, even overlaps with the rest of the categories that you're going to hear about today. But I'm going to focus on the finance side and some of the goals surrounding what to look for when it comes to the finance piece of your puzzle, I guess. Some of the things to think about: budgeting, compliance, and reporting. You want to look at your budget, making sure that it is aligned with what your firm's goals are, whether it be on the fund side or the management company side. So as in the finance side, you have to look at the funds, what you expect to do with the funds, and your LPs money, and also the management fees that you get from your LPs that ultimately goes into your management company. How do you want to utilize that? So you want to make sure, what are your priorities for the year? How do you want to focus this year compared to what you did last year? Those are that's just a very high level way to think about your budget. I usually ask my GPs, what are your priorities? Are there is there anything you want to change, improve, that happened from last year to this year? Another piece is compliance and regulation, ensuring that you know where your LPA timing is for reporting to tax reporting, and even regulatory reporting. And this includes FINRA and your tax. So making sure, another piece of the finance team is ensuring that you work with your service providers efficiently, a lot of strong collaboration and communication. And most of the service providers I've listed here: fund admin, your audit and tax team, legal teams, and consulting teams, just like us at Strut. So just making sure, how was the communication last year? Is there anything you can improve on for this next year? Do we need to increase it, reduce it, anything to make your life and your service provider's life a lot easier? Next thing I want to touch on is cash flow, cash management, and forecasting. On the finance side, you really want to see if you can know what your pipeline is. Do you know how many investments you're going to invest in? What's your deployment plan based on your fundraising and your plan that you spoke about during marketing? Are you aligned with it? Do you need to pivot? Have you pivoted? And do you need to readjust your initial plan? And do you need to inform your LPs of this change? Those are things to think about from a cash flow perspective. There's also looking into next year, exit plans. Do you have any expected exits from any of your companies? Are you going to distribute or recycle those exits? These are all information that you should be speaking with your fund admin, just to ensure that you're collaborating with them properly in a timely manner, giving them enough time to execute, especially if you're going to distribute any of your exits. Next thing, risk management, treasury. As we all know, what happened in earlier this year, we want to ensure, are we with the right banking partner? Are we diversifying? How much cash do we have on hand? Do we want to continue to hold this much cash? Do we want to be a little more lean? These are all things that you want to ask yourself, and whether you're set up for this. There's also seeing how your verbal, or how are you handling your confirmations? Are you being secure? Are you asking for verbal wire confirmations with your investments, ensuring that you're actually wiring the amounts to the right bank account? Similarly with your LPs, when you communicate with them, are you protecting them and reducing the risk of any identity theft? How strong are those areas in your firm? Do we need to improve on that in any way? Tax planning. This is obviously a huge part, ensuring that you are in compliance. Zosha touched on it a little bit. Seeing if you have any delayed or late payments, how can we make that even better, and making sure that you pay on time going forward if you are delayed. So those are things that you want to think about. If there's any tax planning that you want to do, think about it throughout the year, earlier in the year, as opposed to waiting until December to tag in your tax team to say, hey, what can we do to reduce taxable income at the management company? So next, audit planning. I wanted to touch on a couple things now, audit planning and tax planning, just because we're in the time, top of mind. This is where you're headed to. So I wanted to just touch on it more in depth here. So audit planning right now, if you haven't already, making sure that you have calls with your audit team and with your fund admin team. This way, everyone is on the same page. You're not playing telephone. Everyone is listening to the same advice. So asking your audit and fund admin team, what is the timeline? Are these timelines doable for everyone that's on the team? Interim testing is happening now. So if you have not heard about this interim testing, please reach out to your audit and fund admin team to see where you can help move this along. Year-end testing typically happens between January and March, depending on what type of deadline you have. So again, check with your team. Zosha touched on this as well. Ensure you know what each team's roles are. Who's responsible for what? When the audit team sends over a open items list, fund admin should be the one to first tackle it, tagging in the GP for approvals. A lot of the things that need GP approvals are valuation, the financials before it gets audited, before it's audited and sent to the auditors, and then ultimately the final audited financials. All right, next, tax planning. Again, we're in the season of tax planning, very similar to audit. Schedule a call with your tax and fund admin team. Same reason, ensuring everyone is on the same page. Tax deadlines, making sure you know what your requirements to deliver to your LPs are, and your own tax return deadlines. Making sure you know what the tax team is doing. Are they extending your tax returns, or are they going to file the day that it's due? Making sure you know who is ultimately responsible for approving your tax returns, which is the GPs. So you as a GP need to know when you need to be part of the process. And again, communication is key. Part of the things now that needs to be done is ensuring all the contact information of your LPs are up to date. Check with your fund admin to see if that's planned out and ready to go. So just knowing also the fund admin's role in the tax side of things, they're pretty limited. So it's making sure, again, communicating what are they willing to do? What is your responsibility as a GP? Some other things to think about for tax planning, pass-through tax election. That is something that the fund can do depending on your states. So reach out to your tax team to see if you qualify for this specific PTET. Another tax planning, kind of just want to throw it out there, bonuses right now. If you are thinking about it, considering it for your team, this is the time to make sure this goes out prior to year end. So the last thing, other top of mind things to think about, 1099s. This is going to be full swing December and January. December is when you want to ensure you gather all the W-9s from all your vendors that you have paid. This, again, tag in your fund admin to see if they are taking responsibility for it. If not, we'll need to figure out, internally who's handling it. Preparation of 1099s typically happen in January. So be prepared to be asked questions from your fund admin on what's next and how to issue these. Next thing, Form ADV. There are updates and payments that need to be done. I'm not going to go through this fully, but again, check with either your legal or your fund admin team to see if they are going through with the process and assisting you with this. If not, you will need to do it yourself or find a compliance team to do it. So the last thing I have here, pro tip and a reminder, all your service providers that you have are your partners. So treat them as an extension to your team. Yes, even your auditors. It may sound like auditors are there to make your life harder, but they're not. So they have a lot of information and resources that can help you. For example, with valuation, anytime you have any questions, concern, tag them in. They're willing to help and answer your questions ahead of you finalizing your financials. So everyone here, including Strut, are your partners. So handing it over to Vienna on the IR side.
Hey y'all. Okay, yeah, I'm the head of investor relations. I'm going to talk through quickly just some prep for a fundraise if you are planning to fundraise next year, and then also something that might be more applicable to everyone, which is ongoing LP engagement. Great. So fundraising readiness. I'm going to start by just talking through quickly the CRM and pipeline. It is extremely important to have this set up correctly from the beginning. Generally, I recommend that your CRM and pipeline are linked, if not fully supported by the same tech. If not, it'll be a lot of manual entry, increased risk of error, and we don't want any of that. So ideally, they're both in the same place. For tech selection, what we're aiming for is we're really trying to increase visibility across the firm. We're trying to track progress, right? So you probably want some element of data visualization there. And then, of course, a budget will be a factor as well in what CRM you pick. But generally speaking, the less funds that you're able to throw at this means the more that you have to build yourself. Then we need to implement the CRM. Hopefully this won't take too long. And then we need to deal with the pipeline structure. So thinking about the fields that we need to track for the raise, but also for future raises. So there's going to be a lot of LPs that are like, love what you're doing, but we don't invest until, you know, maybe a fund 3 and you're raising a fund 1. You don't want to lose those contacts. You don't want to lose those opportunities. So please be sure that you're tracking all of that for the future as well. And then the statuses that you use really should reflect the process that the firm takes. So every single step should just reflect the process of the firm. Then we're going to talk a little bit about data room here. We'll also have tech selection as well, right? You're going to have a data room provider. Kind of the same thing. We're looking to increase visibility, right? So we want to see where LPs are spending their time. What did they download? What did they look at? How long have they been looking at it? Is now a good time to follow up with them and be like, hey, can I walk you through our SOI or something like that, right? So you want to be able to have that visibility there. Of course, you also want it to be secure. Ideally, it's branded to your firm. And honestly, I kind of just recommend DocSend, and that really has become the market leader. And I think it's generally a great software to use. For the data room materials, definitely create a tracker and make sure that, you know, everything is getting done. The materials that you're going to be aiming for is going to be dependent on the LPs that you are targeting. The more sophisticated your LPs are, the more materials you're going to have to create and more in depth they're going to have to be. You're also going to want to create a timeline around all of that, right? So consider pre-marketing before you actually launch the fundraise. And the point of that is really to get feedback from LPs without looking like you're being wishy-washy about the fund strategy. So that's something to keep in mind. And it'll be dependent on sort of how warm your opportunities already are. And then you'll go into full-fledged fundraising, which is really when your full data room should already be ready. Then for LP onboarding and closing process, you want to ensure a smooth closing process. You do not want to be the problem for your LPs signing and closing and wiring and all that stuff. So a couple tips on that front. Make sure that you put yourself in the LP's shoes and understand the experience from beginning to end, right? There should be someone who is responsible for answering questions, following up, moving things along. And ideally, that is not the GP. And the reason for that is because we want to protect the GP-LP relationship. That's the most important thing. And so the GP doesn't want to be perceived as annoying, honestly. So if we can put that on someone else, that's ideal. Tech can also help with this. There's a lot of automation that makes it look like the software automatically followed up and that you didn't. So you can do some manipulation there as well. And then for the closing tools themselves, This depends on a few things, but basically fund admins can provide them. AngelList and Carta do, for example. The tool is embedded in their platform. Some legal teams also provide a tool. I think Vanilla is probably the most common one used, and that can also be an option. And then there's standalone tools, and the most popular one is Pass-Through, and it's great. So highly recommend that. But things to think about when you're picking one of those is, again, visibility. That's always at the forefront. So we want to be able to see where is the LP at in the process. Are they stuck? Do we need to reach out? How will legal access the documents and review them, right? Do they have ease of access? And is it easy for the LPs to use? Is the UX straightforward, or are they going to get lost? Generally speaking, we just want to make sure that the LP knows what to expect from signing to wiring and then ongoing communication and reporting. And of course, make sure all of the service providers are on the same page of the process and are aware of their responsibilities, because we want nothing to fall through the cracks. Lastly, as you're thinking through all of that, staffing, right? So placement agents, a lot of folks are considering them right now, given the difficult environment. Generally speaking, placement agents have limited success with emerging managers. So there's a few reasons for that. One, they don't want to take on funds with a limited track record in this environment. Two, they often work on a commission basis, right? So small funds are often not worth their time. And then three, they're being bombarded with interest. So it just, kind of makes sense to go with a larger fund. But if you do decide to go with a placement agent, make sure you ask for references, track record, and insight into their network. And if you decide to move forward, create an incentive structure that is mutually beneficial, and of course, set up regular check-ins to monitor progress, because you want to make sure that they're actually working, particularly if you're paying them on like a monthly basis. Okay, and then outside fundraising support. This can be much more affordable than someone in-house, depending on who you go with. The benefits are that you can, there's a lot of flexibility there. You can kind of ramp up or down depending on where you're at with your fund cycle. And then you have access to a broader team and a more holistic view of the market, and kind of a range of expertise. So that can definitely be a route to go. And then of course, an internal hire, and that's just really dependent on, do you have enough long-term work, whether you're fundraising or not? And do you have the budget for it? Next slide. Great, IR engagement plan. So securing new checks right now is super hard, but securing recommits is also proving really difficult. A couple years ago, it was like, if your fund performed well, then they would be signing on to fund 2. And that's really no longer the case. And your investors are expecting kind of ongoing excellence post their investment. So things to think about on that front. On-time reporting in K1s. Make sure you know your LPA. You'll hear all of us say that, but what deadlines have you signed up for? And are you meeting those deadlines, right? Because when you are late, you are making your LP late on their reporting as well. And if you're causing them stress, they're not going to want to recommit to your fund. So just keep that top of mind. Timely LP communication. If someone reaches out to you and asks a question, it might take you like, a few days to get a response, or to get an answer rather, but definitely respond within a couple hours and let them know that their question is your priority and that you're on it. And then lastly, ongoing engagement strategy. So LPs want more like value outside of just returns. So think about what you can provide that isn't a huge additional lift, right? So what are you already doing? You're probably like reading market news, you're sourcing companies and building a pipeline, you are talking to those companies and gaining a lot of insights. So, you can write something up about market insights, or different things that you're seeing between startups or what have you. And you can put this content in, you can package it however you want, whether it's a newsletter or a report, or just in your quarterly updates, but definitely want to be providing value on that front. There's, of course, also events. I have some clients that, try and see every LP once a year. That's totally possible if you have the time for it. But really consider, where you're putting your effort and how far that goes. And in regards to an annual meeting, if you're considering whether to go virtual or in person, it's like, one, you need the budget for it. It does cost a lot of money, and really make sure that you're able to get the right people in the room for it to be valuable, because you don't want it to flop with that much investment. And then lastly, just ensure broader marketing efforts as well, because you want to stay top of mind. Of course, I'm not suggesting to market your fundraise. There's a lot of limitations around that, but more so just for the firm broadly to have a presence. That's it from me.
Thanks, Vienna. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Liederbach, and I am the Communications and Marketing Manager at Strut. And so I'm going to share some insights on strategic annual planning when it comes to marketing, which is very connected to IR as well. So marketing is now crucial for VC firms. The landscape is more competitive than ever. So having a recognizable name and a positive reputation can really help you win LPs and founders. So if they've already heard something about you when they meet you, especially something good, that's the power of great marketing. So talking about strategic annual planning first, set clear marketing objectives that align with your firm's goals. So next year, are you fundraising or are you looking for deal flow? Are you focused on helping your startups grow? So your marketing initiatives and where you focus your energy should align with your firm's overall goals. If you have already done some marketing, assess your current efforts and look at things like reach, followers, views on your content, number of subscribers on your email list, anything that can show you what's working and what's not. Before you do anything or post anything, always think about your target audience and ask yourself, who is this for and what is the goal? And you should be adapting your marketing strategy for your different audiences. So for example, the types of blog posts that you might do. You could do thought leadership on Forbes Council to reach potential LPs if you're fundraising. You could do founder Q&As on your blog, which really helps your founders feel supported, and it helps to reach their networks of other founders when they share that content. Another example is you can segment your newsletter for different audiences. So where you're sharing, content for LPs in a newsletter versus founders in another newsletter. If you're thinking about institutional LPs, they want clear and regular communication. And for them, you should always be highlighting your success stories and your successful track record and showcasing the expertise at your firm. So choose the right marketing channels for your audiences. Go where they are. Some examples are posting on other blogs that they read, or for events, you might want to sponsor an ecosystem event where your deal flow might come from. So there's a lot of channels that you could focus on, but I want to emphasize that it's better to do a couple things really well than to try to do everything that you can't maintain, like starting a podcast, for example, which is really time intensive and then abandoning it. So choose a couple things really well. Next, PR. So assess your PR readiness. Do you know your firm's story and main talking points? And can everyone on your team consistently tell your story when they show up at industry events? Who is a good interviewee on your team? If you're not ready for PR, what you can do is start building relationships with the right journalists for when that time comes and building your brand awareness in other ways. And if you are PR ready and you do want to plan for PR next year, think about, what the newsworthy moments will be, what opinions you have that you want to share, And will you support your portfolio companies in their PR efforts, which is something that I see a lot of firms doing nowadays. Here's a big one. Decide on your budget, and you need to know what you have to work with in marketing. So is it virtually no budget, or do you have funds available to sponsor a happy hour in connection with a larger industry event happening in your area? Do you have the funds to host an intimate founder LP dinner? Maybe it's one big ticket item per quarter, and then the rest is all content marketing and attracting people to you organically. Can you hire a social media contractor to take that off your plate so that marketing doesn't keep getting pushed down on the priority list? These are some things to think about. I see a lot of firms wish that more people knew about them when they could have started doing some marketing years ago. And I will add that your marketing budget and team should grow as your firm grows. You can decide if it's better to hire someone in-house and spend the time and effort training them, or outsourcing to consultants who can hit the ground running. It's all about what's most efficient for you. Next, create your content calendar for next year and stick to it. Decide on the frequency of your posts and what's realistic for you that you can really keep up with based on the time and resources that you have, the number of investments that you plan to make, and the expertise at your firm. So align your initiatives and your content calendar with what you're good at. So do your GPs like writing? Are they involved with social media already and want to be thought leaders? Has anyone gotten good traction with something in the past that they can double down on? And for that content calendar, take note of upcoming firm and portfolio news so that you can be ready to amplify that and to plan your topics and blog content around that. Lastly, track your progress to see what's working and where you need to adapt. You can always switch things up, but know that marketing is a long game, and it is very much like planting seeds. So it's important to just stay consistent, even if you don't have thousands of views on everything right away. It's never too late to start, and it's really amazing to see the growth in your brand awareness that happens over time. So I hope this has been helpful and that you feel empowered to start planning your marketing strategy for next year. And please let me know if I can be helpful in the future. So with that, I will pass it over to Portfolio Service.
Here I am to talk all things portfolio service / platform. Let's dive right in to slide 1. So first things first, let's do the unsexy data side. Now is a perfect time to think through your portfolio data management strategy. It's a great time to do an audit of what you are collecting and how you are collecting it. Are there any gaps? I know there's been a lot of buzz about the upcoming regulations from both our best friend Gavin Newsom, as well as the SEC, about metrics that they'll be expecting funds to show in terms of their investment strategy. So it's a great time to think about what you're tracking and how you're tracking it ahead of that. I know there's still a bit of unknown, but as much as you can gain and garner from the news, making some proactive adjustments now to be in service of yourself in the future will be really helpful. Now is also a wonderful time to catch up. It's very easy to fall behind on data tracking and data management. So don't fall another quarter or two behind. Use the year end and Q1 to catch up on anything that's behind. Also, it's a great time to think about your processes around data tracking. Is it efficient and user-friendly, not only for your internal team, but also if you're asking things of your portfolio founders, is the process for them to provide you data easy and efficient and helpful rather than burdensome and tedious, and make adjustments accordingly. And it's also a great time across all of your functions to review your tech stack and your resources for data collection. Is it a great time to make changes? Are you using the best software to support the data you're tracking? Is it cost effective? Is there something else that's better or more competitive on the market? And do you need to allocate more time and or human resource to this effort? It's a great time to think about, as Nicole will touch on next, hiring. But, do you need to allocate more resource given the obligation and lift? Next slide. And beyond that, let's talk about portfolio engagement or founder engagement. Now is a great time to think through this very nebulous, competitive, and mushy space. Doing portfolio service or platform well is a challenge, not only because the emerging manager space and the number of funds at market is so crowded, but also because there is so much you can do in this category. So I'm just going to touch through some sort of key things to think about, but happy to dive deeper offline if everyone wants to. But first things first, reviewing what you've been doing, what is working, what's not, wins, losses, and how is this tracking against your goals. If you don't have any goals, I think this is the number one problem that I see across a lot of funds. They want to do really great founder engagement. They want to provide a great platform experience, but they have established no metrics or KPIs for tracking what success looks like. 2024 is a great time to implement these and start using them as a metric and a lever to evaluate what you're doing and if the juice is worth the squeeze. So I highly recommend making that a part of your strategic planning. Second, how to do these, like how to make great portfolio engagement goals, make sure they're easily measurable, make sure they're agreed upon by all key stakeholders within the firm. Make sure they're tied to your larger vision, your values, and your strategy as a fund. I always say, don't do something because everyone else is doing it. Do it because it's unique to your DNA and what you as a collective team at the fund have to offer your portfolio. And then most importantly, do what is in service of your founders and what they sincerely need against what you can realistically provide. Every stage of founder growth is different and they need different things in different moments. And so making sure that what you're providing your portfolio is in relevancy to where they are in terms of their life cycle. Now is also a great time, if you haven't already, to conduct a year-end founder survey, get feedback on what you're doing from your core audience and make iterations as necessary. It's also a great time to do an annual resource evaluation, who you're partnering with. So think about like perks, AWS and Google credits, et cetera. Are those programs established? Are there any new core contacts for the services and perks you're offering? Doing like a full audit of what you've got in your perks stack is really helpful at this time of year. And then also, what can you add to be in service again of your founders? What can be updated or revamped to be relevant to them as these companies are evolving and in terms of what you're offering them. Next slide. Is that it? Oh yeah, sorry, portfolio engagement. Great. So preparation and alignment. I think as you're doing all these efforts and you're thinking about what you want to execute on for 2024, make sure that you're prepared and aligned accordingly, that you've thought through the resources you need to deliver on what you're promising your founders, whether you're using an internal hire, a platform or portfolio service or operations hire, or whether you're outsourcing resources. My attitude and my approach with a lot of this is you can do so much externally, but as your portfolio grows into like the 50 to 80 mark and beyond, you definitely need dedicated resource to really deliver if you're having a very robust or active offering for your founders. So think about hires you need to make, resources you need to leverage, whether you're partnering with a really great talent agency to help provide talent resources to your portfolio, et cetera. Make sure you get alignment from key stakeholders. So partner GP participation and leadership is critical for platform success. Having you as the GP be hyper engaged, or having one person either dedicated or the team dedicated to delivering on what you're promising to your founders, and having someone who can also drive forward efforts, get sign off on budget, and help be really committed, not only from a a thought leadership, but also an action oriented approach is really critical. Someone needs to be invested in this within the fund. And if no one's really owning it and embracing it, things die on the vine very quickly and your execution tends to be poor from what we see. And then again, working to align your human capital with your budget. Setting a budget for your portfolio strategy is critical. And it allows you to kind of measure your progress along the way. And finally, most importantly, which I sort of touched on already, ensuring that what you're doing is in alignment with who you are and what your founders need. Thinking through thoughtfully, like what portfolio strategy looks like for you, whether it's engagement on the event side, community building, if you're providing customer network, talent support, go-to-market strategy, et cetera. Really be thoughtful about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and making sure that you really do I'd rather see funds do 1 to 2 things exceptionally well than try to do 5 things mediocre. So really thinking through that as you're planning for the year ahead makes a big difference in how your efforts land with founders and how you're spending your money in an effective and thoughtful way. And I'm going to pass it to the queen of my life, Nicole Fuller.
Okay, everyone. Hi. I'm also manning the slides today, so give me just a moment. Okay, so people ops and HR. In terms of strategic annual planning, we've kind of broken this down into 3 core areas: recruiting and hiring, compensation, performance and growth plans, and HR policies. When putting together your recruiting and hiring plan, you'll first want to assess your staffing needs. So go through each department, your investing team, operations, marketing, finance, etc., and assess where the gaps are, where the needs are. Also assess where you as a GP are spending too much time in any of these areas. And also assess if there's enough work for a full-time hire, or can you get creative and either bring in some part-time help or even outsource some of this work as we've been talking about. Next, you'll want to assess your current budget. Do you have enough room currently to make that full-time hire? A lot of recruiting and hiring tends to fall around a fundraise for a VC firm, which we know. Even if that is the case for you, be sure to model out at various fund sizes, what you will be able to afford. From there, you'll create your hiring plan. So often we see GPs just slapping together and winging it, which to no one's surprise doesn't often lead to successful outcomes. Hiring and recruiting takes a lot of your time, money, effort, etc. And we really want to make sure that you have a well thought out plan. This includes making sure that you're thoughtfully thinking through what skills and attributes you want this person to have, crafting a really good and clear job description that's actually realistic. A lot of times we see GPs looking for this unicorn, especially in the Fund 1, Fund 2 early days when you don't have a lot of budget and you have a lot of needs. You just really want to be realistic so that you can set this person up for success. Next is putting together an interview process. This is where, you spend a lot of time and effort. It doesn't have to be super formal or robust. You can take 45 minutes to an hour to, bang out a process, understand, who's conducting the interviews, who's responsible for what, make sure you create your case studies ahead of time. And this will all make this more efficient and save you time and money. Lastly, put together the comp package or an idea of the comp package. Consider industry benchmarks for this role, your AUM budget, and who you need. There's more that goes into this, but we're going to be circulating an annual checklist, and it'll be in there. Next is taking care of and empowering your current team. As part of the strategic annual planning, you'll want to conduct an assessment of the current compensation structure of your team, which includes your staff and partners, as well as your benefits offerings. Salary can be compared against industry benchmarks, how your employee is performing, and of course, your budget. You can also assess carry allocations amongst your team. Is there anyone on your team who doesn't have carry that is progressing in their career and it would be appropriate to allocate some to them in the next fundraise? Or can this be part of a creative retention plan? If you're smaller fund size and can't quite, compensate your employees at industry standard. And lastly, assess your benefits offerings. Is there anything you can add, adjust, or get creative with in this next year as part of your retention strategy and or increased management fee and budget? Once you have your plan, it's important to calendar and communicate any changes. As a reminder, year-end bonuses should be paid out on or before December 31st. You can also always make additional contributions to retirement accounts if you haven't hit that maximum already. This can be a great tax saving strategy. So if you have a lot of income left over at the end of the year, and you are potentially facing a very large tax bill, you can always contribute more to these retirement accounts. It's a great way to reduce that tax bill. Just work with your retirement account providers to make sure that you do it in a compliant way. Also, don't forget to create a plan and calendar the timelines and deadlines for benefits, open enrollment, and processes. This will save you a lot of time and headache in the future. Performance and growth plans. If you don't have this in place for your employees, now is the time to do so. Even if you have one employee. Employees deeply desire transparency around their performance and an understanding of what milestones they need to achieve to continue growing in their careers. Performance and growth plans often get overlooked by GPs, and this is unfortunately especially true for people who are in non-investing roles. I promise putting these in place will have a really big impact on your employees' fulfillment in their career and loyalty to you. And then lastly, just establish those plans, calendar it, and stick to it. You can do quarterly, biannually, annually. Even if you do annually, it will make a big difference. And lastly here, as a CYA, assess your HR policies and procedures that you have in place or that you need to create. As with performance plans and growth plans, your employees, even if you have just one, crave and perform better when you have clear expectations outlined. This is a list of the common policies and procedures that we typically see. It's not all inclusive, but it's a good starting point. There's a lot of templates and resources online in your network. Strut has them. ChatGPT is also a great place to whip one up. So there's a lot of options for you there. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kristen.
Awesome. Well, I hope this has been interesting and inspiring and hopefully not totally overwhelming, but I wanted to power through some quick next steps to help you take all of the information we just unloaded on you and figure out a path forward. Quick and dirty. One, carve out time either before year end or in January or no later than end of Q1 to do a strategic planning session and really make this a thing. Don't just mediocre do it. Like get away from the norm, get in a unique or fun or different space so you can think big picture. A lot of this takes a different part of our brains to do well and set yourself up for success with either yourself or your team to do this in a way that's going to be fruitful. Second, as an outcome for each of these categories, create a list of goals and objectives for your firm for 2024. And again, set clear metrics to evaluate what success looks like. It's really difficult to know if you're trending in the right direction or doing the right thing or tracking budget to actual when you don't have a clear set of metrics that you're evaluating against. Out of that, 2 efforts, build an action plan. And a way to hold accountability to this is to assign dates and roles to each of the sort of core areas that you're focused on, the goals and objectives that you have. So for targeting deliverables, and also who's going to own it and drive it internally, and who's going to be reporting back on success and tracking success. And then make a regular schedule for 2024, either it's quarterly or it's monthly, whatever makes most sense for you, to do check-ins and evaluate progress and track efforts against your goals and also your budget. Because everything you do should be tied to a budget. And so you can use those moments to see how you're tracking budget to actual, work with your fund admin to get those reports and make sure you're on target. And then most importantly, as you move through the process next year, be prepared to refine, revamp, and iterate on the plan. What we think is going to happen isn't what's always going to happen. And you gain learnings and insights from data and tracking against metrics and tracking against budget and seeing things in action. And don't be afraid to pivot, to make changes. What got us here won't get us there. And be bold in being willing to acknowledge, like, what I thought was going to work isn't going to work, and we need to make a change. It'll really help you stay on the edge and help you be really competitive. So that's the news. And I wanted to let you know we're here to help you achieve your goals. Everyone at Strut feels your pain in doing this. We do it day in, day out with managers. We are here to help you. We are actively taking on new clients. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to do this process with you. We're happy to work with you throughout the year. Feel free to reach out. I'm info at, so you'll get me personally. And you can also fill out a form on our website. You're not alone in this journey. We're doing this internally ourselves. There's no shame in the game, and it's okay to ask for help. So don't be shy to reach out. I wanted to open the floor to any questions in the chat. I know there was some hand raising. Beverly, Kayla, Vienna, Zosha, Nicole, and I are all here to answer any questions. So feel free to drop them there, and we can kind of tag as needed. As Nicole mentioned, we're also going to send around this recording. We are going to send around some takeaways, some checklists and tools to help you drive this process forward and be successful. And we'll also, of course, send around the presentation. So no worries, that will be in your inbox soon. Gabby, did you want to ask something in chat? I see you raising your hand. Don't be shy.
I brought her on the screen.
Okay, good.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone can hear you.
One question that comes up over and over when we talked about LP communication, right? You communicate regularly about fund performance, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're in the process of fundraising and you have LP prospects that you're trying to reach and build relationships with, what's a good cadence of communicating with that audience, the prospects? And what type of content is, there's so many possibilities, thought leadership, content, exciting, technology topics, startups, portfolio companies that are doing something innovative. Do you have any thoughts that you can share on that?
Yeah, I think there's two different approaches. So Kayla probably has an idea from just sort of like a broader marketing standpoint, right? If you sort of have an ongoing newsletter that has a particular cadence, you would want to put those prospective LPs onto that list as well.
Mm-hmm.
But from more of like a targeted fundraising perspective, I think the goal here is to show, if you are to write a check, this is how much more access you get. And that's a little bit different, because if someone is just like getting a ton of value from a broad newsletter, that's fantastic. That's a great way to get your name out there. But it doesn't necessarily incentivize the check writing. And so generally what I think once you actually launch your fundraise, right, you're out of your pre-marketing phase, you're launching your fundraise, those prospective LPs, you want to give them a taste of what that additional access looks like. So of course, have an NDA in place, all that jazz. But, some of my clients will literally, on the GP update, right? So with the GP letter, broader LP update, they'll just add those prospective LPs to it.
Hmm.
And they'll only do that for, you know, maybe 1 or 2 of them, which would be 1 or 2 quarters. But again, just to give them a feel of that, that's what's really key and important. You want them to hear about the events that they're going to have access to, like all this stuff, and like really ramping up in that period. You definitely don't want to be bothering them once a week.
Yeah.
You want to make it feel like if I sign on, this is the regular cadence that I would continue to get and the value I would continue to get as an LP.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to add too, whether the cadence is monthly or quarterly, just stay consistent and be realistic about what you can manage. And even with social media, which is more indirect, like if an LP looks you up and the last time you posted was, you know, April 2022, you know, it might look to them like you don't have anything to share that is a success story. So just stay consistent.
Right. So that would be in addition to what you do already, like you have, you know, social postings and all that, but then you reach out specifically to the prospects on a quarterly basis, let's just say, and give them something that they wouldn't get on social, right?
Exactly.
Or at
Yeah.
least give it to them in advance of anybody else that get, although I think that doesn't make sense because if I get it 2 weeks later on social anyway, why bother, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some folks also have, you know, an actual LP portal, things to sign on to where, you know, I mean, this is a little bit more advanced, but if you have also previous market reports, things like that, giving them a taste of that, but like not allowing them to download them, and they know that that access is going to be taken away after a certain period if they don't write, like things like that are really helpful.
So in other words, you'd let them in the data room for a little while or have given them access to certain documents in the data room?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so some funds actually have LP portals that are sort of just standing. They're more than a data room. You can build them out in various ways, right? You could have like even events listed there that you might be holding. It might be a way for LPs to connect. It might be a way for LPs to connect to portfolio companies, but that's a little bit broader and a little bit more advanced. But yeah, of course, in your process, you're going to set up a data room, and you do want to really showcase there as well what they're going to be receiving. So those previous LP updates that you've been sending out, newsletters that you've been sending out, you would upload those into the data room to provide examples of that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Awesome. And obviously in-person meetings, nothing beats that, right? Because that's
Of course.
yeah. And it's hard because they're obviously, you know, bombarded by everybody left and right to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner with them. So that's another question, actually, you know, what attracts someone to actually meet you for lunch or, you know, a small lunch with a couple of prospects and maybe a couple of portfolio companies and a discussion about a topic that everyone is keen to learn more about, right? I mean, that's something that we're trying to, or I would like to try, because I think that's a win-win all around. Still, time is of the essence to everyone, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's also why I mentioned with, you know, if you decide to go with an in-person meeting, whether that's for your annual meeting or some other type of meeting, I think the most important key there is to make sure that the right people are in the room in order for that to be valuable. Yes, we definitely want it to be a very interesting topic as well. But I think that that's the key. And so really trying to assess interest in advance before throwing a huge budget at an event is definitely a good idea there.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing.
Any other questions? Anyone else? Alrighty, well, we'll let you go. I know we're a tiny bit over. So more soon. Excited to do this with you all. And again, don't be shy. We're here to help. Don't hesitate to ask questions, reach out to anyone individually on the team, and or just hit me at info@strutconsulting.com and I can direct you to the right channel. So good luck. You're going to do great. 2024 is going to be fantastic if you put a little elbow grease into it. So we're here to support you, and we wish you all the best, and see you again on a future webinar.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.